Yeah, I think we should start. We have a very busy agenda again. Thank you everyone for joining the technical session. Our theme, which is our business landscape today and tomorrow, and in that one we'll have the session about the key trends transforming the seed business. Before we start, I just want to acknowledge that APSA standing committees and special interest group uh, have been instrumental in discussion, deciding the sessions, and as well as developing the technical platform for APSA. Uh, so with that, I think we have a very rich session here. Before we dive into the business aspect of it, a very quick, I would say, call or presentation from on our sustainability action. For that, I'll invite Suchita Ramprakash. She is the head of sustainability in East West. Suchita, thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really tough to be awake after the lunch, but I'll promise you that I'll keep you awake at least for 5 minutes. Today we will talk about sustainability. That is not something new. It's already part of who we are as an industry and how we can scale it together. So as we sit here today, farmers across the Asia are facing heat waves, floods, shifting seasons. Fields that once thrived are struggling to adapt now. Yet all of these farmers still plant, nurture, and feed the world. So that's the reality we are part of, and it's also our opportunity. So Asia Pacific is truly a powerhouse of global agriculture. We are home to 85% of world's 500 million smallholder farms, feeding over 2 billion people. And our region produces more than half of the world's food supply. That's incredible. But we are also one of the most climate vulnerable regions on the earth. Floods, droughts, rising sea levels, these are not future scenarios, they're happening right now. And what happens here will define global food security. So that's how much our work actually matters. So the reality is, climate change is not something we prepare for anymore. I remember we saying like 10 years ago, it's alarming, but now it is something we are living through. 2024 was the first full year above 1.5 degrees Celsius, a turning point in the human history. It was about 1.6 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels. That is between what was the temperature between 1850 to 1900. That was the baseline. And in 2025, Paris Agreement was adopted by 196 countries to limit the global warming or global temperature raising to 2 degrees Celsius by end of century, but we have already reached now at least limit to 1.5 degrees Celsius, but we are already crossing. And it is increasing, it's not stopping there. So that's definitely a serious issue. But the good thing is, it's not something new to our industry. In fact, seed companies have been practicing sustainability for decades, even before we use the term. Through R&D, developing seeds that adopt droughts, heat, pests, helping farmers grow more with less, that has been going on. So overall, the climate change number translates into lost crops, unstable seasons, and struggling livelihoods. Alone in 2023, the data says 23 million people were displaced. And just to give you an example, last week in the Philippines, there was super typhoon. At least 1 million people have been displaced. So sustainability now means business continuity, resilience, and survival. It's not something add on or nice to have. It's all about it is the foundation of how we keep growing as industry. So as I mentioned, sustainability is not something new. It's been going on for years. R&D, the way we produce innovative seeds through sustainable practices, efforts to protecting soil, water, biodiversity, and through seed production and farmer partnerships, efforts to strengthening livelihoods and profitability, and through efficient operations, reducing waste and energy. These are not new. This is part of our DNA. So what is needed now is to connect these actions and accelerate together. Our seed industry is not a problem. It's a part of the solution. So every sustainable food system begins with a seed. Seed is another part. But to truly make an impact, we need to move from individual efforts to collective transformation. When we connect innovation, production, and also farmer outcomes, we can multiply success. So collaboration is what takes us from good intention to real lasting impact. So I just wanted to share at the global level in the seed industry, the International Seed Federation, ISF, has already been steering this change. I'm also part of that ESR coordination group. We've set up Environment and Social Responsibility Coordination Group in 2022. And this year, we are also working on some tangible projects. One is finalizing the social rights guidelines in the industry, and also we released concept paper on how the seed industry contributes to the global sustainable development goals. So this mission is clear. So the mission is clear, is to unite this seed sector in one voice for more sustainable and resilient value chains. So, and here in Asia Pacific, we can take that global momentum and bring it closer to our regional realities. So here is the call for action for all of us. We can compete in business, but we must collaborate for the planet and also for future generations. Sustainability is not something that we can think later. It should be how we do the business. So I request, and I also propose three key things we can do is to share and learn best practices to scale up in the industry, and bring regional insights into ISF's sustainability framework, and then begin regional dialogue on sustainability to address what are those challenges in the industry, especially in Asia Pacific, and also how can we work on opportunities. So this is our moment. Sustainability does not belong to a company or one crop or a country. It belongs to all of us. And today we will also hear from several speakers after this who will be exploring this theme from different angles, from innovation to technology, climate adaptation, and farmer empowerment. All of this connects back to sustainability and climate change in its own way. So really looking forward to hearing perspectives and continuing this dialogue together, and really looking forward to working on sustainability with this group after APSA Congress as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Suchita, for that call on sustainability. I now invite a speaker who doesn't need any introduction, and I think he's the most apt speaker to take us through what Indian seed sector has gone through, what's the status, and what the future holds for Indian seed sector. I invite Dr. K.V. Subbarao for the speech. Dr. Subbarao.
So good afternoon, everyone. I hope we can see me from here. I think if we can reduce this light, I would really appreciate that. It's just hitting my face. I can't see the audience here. Can somebody reduce this light here, please? Okay, then I probably need to shift I have no idea. Anyway, I think first of all, good afternoon, members of APSA, industry colleagues. I was about to say that some of my friends were missing from here, I also wanted to acknowledge them that they are outside and listening to me. Uh, in any case, I think it's an honor to be with all of you today to speak about the topic, Indian seed industry, past, present, and future. So before I go into my presentation, I just wanted to make sure that that all of us take two things. The first one is I'm not going to speak a lot about the data, although you'll see some numbers. I think I'll leave it to the subsequent session. And the second is I have got one part of my session really speaking about what is that we need to do to make this industry globally competitive and become number one in the global scenario. When you start listening to me, it sounds very negative. Don't take it negative. It is just to raise the bar in the industry so that we work towards it and get better uh, every day. So my agenda is basically I just tried to construct this around the left-hand side. If you look at the graphic, I know some of you would have recalled that it is a simple, very powerful philosophical construct which is called yin and yang. I think that is, I took this from the perspective of the nature that we are in today as an industry. It is essentially the dynamic duality that we are in, and we need to appreciate both. So my presentation will go through into two dimensions. On the first dimension, I am going to talk about the vibrancy of this industry, what we have built so far, whether it is multi-decadal strong growth that you have seen in the industry, which is phenomenal, and the technologies that have really changed not only the Indian agriculture, but also brought in significant value to the seed industry, and an expanding market access across crops and geographies. So all these things really brought tremendous value for us. And this is going to continue in the future, I have no doubt about it. That is one side of the story that I'm going to talk about. And the second dimension is even more important, which is actually going to highlight the constraints that we are living in today and how do you overcome that. When I say constraint, I'm going to dwell upon a few things. The first one is the regulatory complexity that we have and the weak enforcement of the regulatory whatever laws that we have in place. And most important thing is I've been a very passionate person as to R&D is so important and how we underinvest in R&D in India today. And also the kind of operational fragmentation that we have in the industry and how we try to improve that. I think these are the 3-4 elements which are actually driving a lot of value erosion which otherwise would have come into the seed industry. My own personal estimates are that we are almost close to $300-500 million is is not in the mainstream, which actually would come if we start doing these things. So this duality of this vibrancy and this constraints, that's what we live in as an industry. It's important for the leaders sitting here to understand this balance and how we navigate as we move forward. Though I'm speaking a lot about the Indian industry, I happen to work in Asia, Africa, and many countries. It's probably no different. I'm sure the learnings will extend to other countries too here. So when we look at the industry, I try to summarize in one sheet here. So we started with the 1960s, 70s, where we have an ecosystem which was predominantly built around the public R&D and the open pollinated varieties. I think at that time, if you look at the Indian seed ecosystem was largely subsidy driven, and also it is concentrated in the public domain. But the real transformation happened in the 1980s and 90s, wherein there is a significant public to private transition. I happened to be my first job also during this period. And I remember very clearly that that was really a turning point for the industry, wherein we launched several hybrids. Hybrids have grown in multiple crops like sorghum, SSG. Of course, those crops people don't recall. At that time, they are very good crops, in my opinion. Then cotton, corn. I think we got lots of hybrids into the marketplace. In addition to that, the most important thing that happened during the decade in the country has been a lot of institutional capacity grew, when I say that, the seed industry really started building seedsmanship, and also what I would call the investment into the developing your own proprietary germplasm that we have seen. Not only the companies from multinational companies, but also lots of Indian companies started doing that. And more importantly, along with that, we also saw the distribution system kind of structurally enabling the whole process. Now, I am more excited. I am still more excited. Still, we are in 2020 to 2025. The 20 years period from 2005 to 25, what we call is the most vibrant growth. Not only growth, there are multiple other things that happened in the country. I don't know how many of you really appreciate that. I just wanted to summarize very quickly a few of those. Firstly, I said that this is the most vibrant period, and it has been a multi-fold growth, anywhere between 4 to 5 times growth that happened from a value perspective. But more importantly, we have launched hybrids in the crops that did not exist in the previous period, whether it is hybrid vegetables, whether it is mustard, or some of those examples. And more importantly, we also increased the value per acre, in the sense we worked on the agronomy and drew plant population increase, wherein the farmers started sowing more seeds per acre, and actually that also brought value to the seed industry. And I acknowledge here very fairly that I never anticipated that the varietal business would grow so well in the last decade. In the hindsight, it's very easy for me to say that the kind of growth that we are seeing in varietal rice and varietal wheat is again phenomenal that has happened in the last decade and a half. And also some companies captured seed treatment values. So these are some of the elements, in addition to the main seed business, some of the additional factors that actually contributed to the growth of the seed industry. And now 2 more elements I want to touch upon, which good to acknowledge those from the growth of the industry from my point of view. The first one is there are thousands of our company field workers that actually reached out to farmers and brought the awareness about the seed and helped them to make the right choices. I think that is very important. I will tell you why. And this has really brought not only the value for the seed industry. If you look at the rural retail points that have grown through this period, is phenomenal. So when you put all these things together, the technologies, the fieldworks, and the demand generation, and the distribution system, these are the core fundamental elements of any seed business to sustain for the future. So the strong base that is created is actually going to propel the further growth as we move forward. And one thing I wanted to also bring to our notice, I am sure all of you are aware, but it's good to remind ourselves that in this period, if you look at, the farmers clearly shifted to those crops where the profitability is, right? Whether it is driven by MSP, whether it's driven by commodity prices, it is clearly farmers shifted. That is why you saw a big increase in acres of rice and corn during this period. So this is all the nice rosy side of it. But at the same time, let me turn the other side of it, other side of the equation, what I would call, right? See, while the industry really capitalized on this growth, there's also been a substantial value erosion that happened in the industry. I just wanted to be very bold here. I could not speak the same language when I was working in my earlier company. Now I'm a free bird. I can speak very upfront, so that at least build some realization amongst us and work towards it. So when I say I saw erosion, I will use 3 slides in the subsequent as to what this erosion is in detail. But more importantly, the consequence of that value erosion for the organization, its impact is important for us to understand. So what happened was that I spoke about underinvestment R&D. Had the dollars been there today, we probably would have invested more. That's why, as of today, in the Indian seed industry, I see that we are not investing enough into R&D, right? And then when you don't invest enough, if you want to become a global competitive company or globally competitive industry, we did not create that foundation. I would say that we lost that opportunity for the last few years or so. And then that also lost opportunity both in terms of technology introductions as well as new crops are some of the elements that I would call, right? So before I go into the elements of erosion, I want to bring back your energy back for the opportunity for the seed industry for the next few decades. So I believe that the growth is going to be more or same. And if really that happens, this industry is going to grow from 4 or 5 billion, at least a minimum of doubling it. I think some people already shown in the earlier slides, right? So my point here is that anyway that is good, growth is going to happen. Can we do something more to add value to that? That is a second component, what I would call some of the erosion that is going to happen if you bring back that additional $500 million into the mainstream, that will bring more value for the seed companies and the industry itself. And then the last point is that it does not going to happen by itself. This is where individually as companies and collectively together, we need to believe and start acting on those. And that's what I'm going to ask each one of you to look at that. So from the future growth perspective, we said that it's going to happen, but there are four pillars that are going to contribute to that growth. So the number one pillar is there will be continued acreage increases, wherein more farmers are going to come into the mainstream seed that is supplied by the seed sector, whether it is rice and wheat. We just started on the varietal front. And I'm sure more new crops coming in. I think there's likely a possibility we are going to get hybrid PGNP, which is already there, and soybean we did not even touch. I think all those things are clearly where the new acres are going to come into the mainstream of seed industry. And the second important thing is the value per acre. We are already in many acres, and I am very bullish on this. The largest expense that grows today into the management of the crop is herbicide and weed management. And these are technologies are available, both GM and non-GM. And these are going to come in many of the crops. We already have seen in coming in rice, and mustard is already there from whatever. And then there's only going to expand into more crops, in my opinion, right? So these are a couple of examples where we are going to see a tremendous value that is going to be created. And the third pillar is really on the regulatory environment and the value restoration. That's what the heading that we'll put, which you will see from me. I'm going to convince you that there is a lot of value that is lost just because the regulatory environment is not happening at the pace that is needed, which otherwise we would bring new technologies. And enforcement is the fourth one. If you enforce the IP, which Dr. Mahapatra talked about, a significant value is going to come into the mainstream seed industry. Those are the four pillars: the acre, the value, the regulatory, and the fourth one is the enforcement of IP. I think if all those things happen, my left-hand side graph, which is a tiny one, the middle one is the 2025. I projected a very steep growth. If all those ideal things happen, I think we're surely going to get there. Just be part of it, that growth story. So now, when we look at the second part of it, so far we are in the one half of my presentation wherein we said that everything is vibrant, is going to be good. I fully believe in it. But let us look at the second half of it, which is where our action is needed. So when we look at this growth that all of us enjoyed, and I believe that the value captured by the seed companies is not complete as on today, and there is a, I would call, very systemic value leakage that is happening within the industry. So when we try to kind of highlight some of these things, it falls into three domains. The first domain is related to the regulatory domain. We'll talk about it. And the second one is your R&D domain, and third is your operational domain. I think these are the three domains where there is a value leakage that is happening that we need to bring back into the seed industry. I'll come back to this slide to ask a few things from you. Before I do that, let me go back and dwell upon the first domain, wherein we are seeing significant value that is being drained out. So our companies who invest into R&D, they bring new products into the market, and products are very strong, and there are very strong genetics, and there is strong brand. But by the time you realize the value, which is the potential value on the left-hand side, and to the right-hand side is there is significant loss. There are three components that are really happening there. So the first one is uh, the lookalike products, or the imitation products, whichever you wanted to call, they come into the market at a discounted price, because of which even the main innovators also have to decrease the price. There is a straight value loss across the industry when this happens, just on the first price front. And the second one is the discounts. So discounts, how that will happen is in two ways. The first one is the person who is the innovator, when he goes into the market, because he has to compete there, he's already giving additional discounts, which otherwise would come to the company. It is going to the discount, going to the trade. And second thing, what happens is, in any case, people want to push the products, imitation products, they already keep passing on more discounts, right? It's very surprising to see that the companies operate at 10 to 12%, and the highest goes up to 25 to 30%. That's the kind of a leakage that happens, which otherwise will come into the mainstream business. And the third component is the counterfeit ones. These are the most dangerous ones. It is just not the value loss for the organizations, but more importantly, the reputational loss and the farmers' belief and the trust on the companies. These are the three clearly value losses that are happening. And if you work towards a little bit of better enforcement, it can become a more predictable enforcement. The industry is going to capture this value, in my opinion. So, and now the second domain that we talked about is about the R&D domain. And we see that the Indian companies invest about 2 to 9%. Then more companies are more towards the lower end of it. There are very few companies who are into the 9 to 10% side. And on the multinational companies, they invest 6 to 10%, depending on the company. But actually, MNCs invest much more when you add the global allocations to this, which we don't normally recognize that. So this gap between the companies is directly influences the depth of our breeding, depth of our product development, and also the speed of the product development one has to do, and also the market-ready pipelines. I think all those things which are really bothering, in my opinion, our industry, just at a very high level in terms of the lack of investments. And the second point is that even though we are spending a lot of money, Indian companies, especially, they're very good at breeding. There's no doubt about it. But today the world has changed, and we really need to immediately act on a few things. One is we need a better germplasm diversity. How you access that, we need to figure out. Without that, we are not going to become very global. And the second one, most important thing is our breeding is still very traditional. We need to move into more data-driven breeding and analytics. And the third one is just the breeding cycles, the way you do things have significantly reduced. We really have to move towards that. So these are all of us heard, but this is not going to happen with the minimal investments that we do today. They require very intentional commitment, and you should not treat investment into R&D as a cost. It should be strategic. It is an asset. That's the mindset need to change, and then that's how we are going to really propel this. And the one more important factor is whether we have money and we have the material elements. This is not going to close unless and until we have the talent, right? Our talent was good, but probably need to upskill into the modern breeding is number one. And number two is, if you want to become global, we also need the talent who has seen what big looks like, right? So, so we need to ensure that the skill gap is also closed. And my favorite, the last one, is just the collaboration. We need to know how to collaborate. Individually, we can compete. If we don't collaborate, I think we'll lose a lot of time, we leave a lot of value on the table, in my opinion, right? This is where your private collaboration comes. If you want to go together, how a sort of a consortium kind of an approach. They are very ideal, I know, but do you have a choice? Because we as Indian companies cannot be so big, but there's an opportunity to come together and go together and take the technologies and compete in the marketplace in a different way. I think that's what I would say as the next important thing. And the third domain that we have is on the operational fragmentation, what I would call, right? I think it is operational domain. Don't take it negative. I'm just giving an average of the industry here. There are very good companies. There are not so good companies. But on an average, if you look at, we have a very fragmented way of going into the market. We have very fragmented way of going into the production, and we make very fragmented decisions financially. I think I've seen working with some of our companies here of late, ever since I retired. So the first one is you can see the value that you are actually leaving onto the table, right? If you have got very good production systems, which are not so fragmented, not each one of us driving each other crazily into the marketplace competing, well, we need to respect the farmers. We need to get the right amount of money, but there's no need to unnecessarily escalate ourselves and lose the value, right? And we have done very minimal digitization in the production front. I think we are definitely losing a lot of value in the way that I took a very simple example of 2 to 4% on the top, which the best companies can run with a very minimal discards in this country is 2.5%. And we have seen companies going into 7, 8, 9, 10%. It is just the value loss that we are doing. And of course, the production costs, all of you know that we have lots of opportunity to save. And on the second 6 to 8%, I picked up that number based on an average. Once again, just the enforcement of IP will straight away bring into it. In addition to the go-to-market effectiveness, whether it is coming through the distribution discounts that you can capture, and also working more methodically with the distributors, and not to have bad debts. Some companies manage bad debts less than 0.5%, and some companies have bad debts of 4 to 5%. But these are very straightforward value leakages which you can see, which can come into the mainstream. And at the end of the day, it's a choice of the good organization you want to bring. We can invest back into the R&D today, which is the need of the hour in our opinion, in my opinion, right? And so just to summarize, well, we can go on talking about, there are so many issues there. But at the end of the day, I would really call for action from of the stalwarts, industry people, everybody sitting here on 3 fronts. The first and the most important thing is we need to speak with a cohesive voice, especially our advocacy for the strong IP enforcement in the country and also across the states, right? And then we also need to work more towards our science-based regulatory systems. And also, as we move into, there are a lot of new technologies coming, regulations are going to evolve. The more agile we are, the more together we kind of go with the one voice. I think that's what the first call from my side to the industry group, so that the fragmentation that is weakening us, probably our cohesion will strengthen us better and create a much better value for the industry. And the second one on the R&D leadership, we need to increase your R&D investments. Otherwise, we are going to be somewhere else, in my opinion. And more importantly, I think we need to learn how to collaborate together in India, collaborate with external parties, or individually or collectively together. And we need to get how to access our global germplasm. I think there are opportunities, in my opinion, in the crops that we are in and we are not in. And also need to know how to do the rapid recycling and then get the products much faster with all the tools. And also bring the best global practices that are there to take the Indian seed industry to the next level at a global level. And the last one is an institutional side, or the what I call the operational side. I talked about a lot of fragmentation that is there. We need to get tech-enabled both in production as well as in sales. And our distribution, the way we go, we need to reward the performance and the effectiveness and just not the influence, right? I think today a lot of things, the way we work is how much they can influence down the trade. I think we need to really get better there. And the last one is the operational excellence that is need. I think if you look at our financial decisions also, they're a little bit fragmented. I think we need to really, at least I have not seen a very disciplined capital allocation that happens. What is my priority? How we are going to be strategically moving forward? I think a couple of examples are those. With that, let me finish off with my last slide. Uh, uh, if really the industry has to unlock this growth, the most important thing is what we need to is a breeding excellence. I think the breeding excellence comes from 4 dimensions that I try to put together in the best way that I can in a simple format. These are the 4 foundational elements for us. The number one is there need to be a clear strategic innovation map. So if you go and ask what is your 10-year, 20-year map, I'm not too sure I will be able to say a very clear map. It is basically, you need to choose your segments, you need to know where you are going to excel, and if you start diluting yourself, there won't be enough money to do it. This more often I see that this is happening. So if you have got this, where I'm going to excel, and you're going to invest disproportionately there, that's where I would call is as an example of is an innovation map. And the second one is the R&D operations need to be more integrated all the way from the tools that we talked about, whether it is genomic selections, phenotyping, environmental typing, etc., all those things, but also your product development, which is the most critical, that go to market. The more integrated you are, your speed and accuracy of the product delivery is going to go up significantly. And the third one is the commercialization of that. It is just not all the time innovate. Innovation is a science, but you also need to know how to get the commercial value out of it. While you go and put into the market, you need to know how to license those many times and how to capture the value in that short period of the product life cycle that you have and the technologies that you have. And the fourth one is your agility to respond to the evolving regulations. More and more technologies are going to come. As an organizations, we need to try to build all these 4 elements. While you do that individually, we also need to look at the right-hand side of it, what I would call a shared aspiration for the future. I try to pick up a few examples here as to why you're excelling yourselves, you need to work together. So one of the things that I would take is that even today, more than 50% of the gross cropped area, seed industry is not even touching it. So can we develop it together? Right, there's an example. And the second one is, we talked about, I mean, this whole global partnerships. We need to do that. We need to go together. I repeatedly said 2-3 times. And the third is yield reduction trade, raw trades. I tried to find a good term so that it's not controversial. This is one of the most complex thing, right? And that's how seed industry survives on it. Individually, can you do everything? No, probably. We need to know how to partner. We need to develop this and share with each other. And I believe that on the fresh produce side, value partnerships are the ones which are going to create the value. In fact, one of the companies that I help here is called Sanatech. They have these gene-edited tomatoes, which is high GABA content, which actually good for your health. It reduces blood pressure. So this is a complex value chain to close. But there is seed value, but unless you collaborate very extensively, it's not going to get there, right? So with that, I'll just close my comments uh, in the following tone. One is, I think I talked both the positives and negatives of it. Every industry in every era, this conflict situation is always there. While on one hand, it enables the growth, and on the other hand, it tries to pull back. I think this is the reality. But as we together is how you balance this and move forward. To summarize, India has the scale. I think it is envy for many, right? And I think we have got best of the scientific talent. Can we streamline that better? And we have got excellent entrepreneur energy and to do things. And most importantly, we have got a very strong farmer base who love to adopt these technologies. I think your landscape is phenomenally good for you and for the industry to move from very tactical to more vision based, slightly longer term, and being reactive all the time, build some long-term strategic plans, and then the fragmentation we need to get out of it and become more collaborative. So I hope that kind of helped you to give some perspective of the industry about the where we started, where we grew, and how we create this dynamic place. But we have got lots of opportunities to working together and unlock the value and bring it to the mainstream. And over a period of time, hopefully, I'll still be there to see that India has become one of the most valued and needed seed industry globally. With that, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Subbarao, for the call to the industry. Any questions for him? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Subbarao. Now I invite Dr. Bharti Malhotra. She will talk about the global seed market and the role of scientific innovations in value chain. Bharti, over.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank APSA for giving me the opportunity. And today I'll be taking you through trends in the global seed market and role of scientific innovation in value chain. In my agenda, I'll start with a very brief introduction to S&P Global. Then we'll dive into the seed market dynamics, moving to innovation across the value chain, and then the market outlook. So S&P Global is the world's largest data provider with around 35,000 employees, presence in 145 plus countries, serving 50,000 plus customers. Most of you might be knowing us on the name of from our rating business or S&P Global 500 Index. But we are also into the agribusiness, wherein we reach through various merger and acquisitions. So I'm a part of the commodity insight groups, wherein we have various divisions, including agriculture and biofuels, energy transition, fuels and refining LNG. Within the agribusiness value chain, what makes us unique is that we cover the entire value chain from inputs to retail and food services. We have experts from fertilizers, crops, protein, biofuels, aquaculture, food production, and I'm a part of the crop science team, which covers crop protection and seed. This is my team structure, and I won't go into too much detail, but just to mention, we have around 200 plus of years of combined industry experience with 6 PhDs and multiple postgraduates in our team. Our methodology. So all the market estimates that I will be presenting today are at the ex-manufacturer level. And the currency conversion are performed at 12 months average. For seed estimate in Southern Hemisphere, we take the planted area. So say, for example, for 2025, we cover the 2025-26 agriculture year so that we can cover all the crops that are being cultivated in 2025. I will also be showing you some of the market outlooks, and our outlook estimates are generated through our proprietary model that are programmed using Python that ingest S&P Global forecast macro and agriculture economics data. And then for seed, we include the drivers like new trait introduction, etc. Going forward, all our outlook publish remains subject to change as and when the information become available. So this is the overall view of the crop science sector. So we estimate the crop science sector as 148 billion. Agrochemicals from 71 billion of that. That's the largest segment, followed by seeds, which is your $53 billion. And then the biologicals, that is 9 billion, and digital agriculture, 10 to 15 billion. Again, for the seed value, it is at the ex-manufacturer level and exclude the farmer saved seeds. This pie chart here is showing you the regional market analysis for 2024 for the seed sector. So North America is the largest market with 37% of the market value, followed by Asia Pacific, Europe, and Latin America. So this graph here is showing you how the seed industry has evolved from 1996, when the GMCs were introduced first time, to 2024. The blue bars are showing the total seed market value, and the yellow line is showing the GM seed market value with the axis towards right. So between 2000 and 2008, the increase in the GM area and the growth in the market value was proportionate. From 2009 onwards, growth in the GM seed market was higher than the area growth, supported by high-priced new seed technologies and their introduction and adoption. In the past 5 years, the increase in the crop planted area, the global crop planted area, was relatively stagnant. And the market growth was basically driven by the increased seed prices that was led due to increased technology adoption. In 2025, we are expecting a market growth of 0.9%, though the data that I'm presenting to you is based on the outlook that we published previously, and we publish this report twice a year, and my new outlook is going to publish very soon. So looking at the company's results and the new area indication, I feel that the market might grow a bit more than what we were expecting, and it will grow between 0.9 to 1.5% in 2025. So the slide here is showing you the comparison of the leading top 12 seed companies in 2015, 2020, and 2024, and we will be seeing what is shifting and how is it evolving. So in 2015, we had major players as Monsanto, DuPont, Syngenta, Wilmorin, Dow, Bayer. And then after 2015, and between 2015 and 2018, the consolidation era began. There was a merger of Dow and DuPont. Bayer acquired Monsanto. And then BASF acquired Bayer's seed business. Syngenta got acquired by ChemChina. Then later on, there was a spin-off of Corteva from Dow and DuPont. In 2020, the leading player changed to Bayer, Corteva, Syngenta, and BASF, and we saw an entry of a regional player, Longping High-Tech, at number 11. Then in 2024, we are now seeing the leadership board with few new entrants like GDM, which was at number 9. So in 2024, GDM, an Argentinian-based seed company, they acquired KWS corn and sorghum seed business in South America and reached to the number 9. In 2025, now we are moving from the consolidation era to the split up era. Now the company started to split up. So we see there was this announcement from Corteva wherein they are splitting up their seed and the crop protection business. Then there was an announcement from BASF that they will be entering into IPO by May 2026 and at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Then although Syngenta has withdrawn its IPO, but it will still remain its strategic goal, but we see that it is unlikely before 2026. And going forward in 2026, we are seeing like rise of the regional player, like LHPT has moved from number 11th in 2020 to number 6 in 2024. And now the GDM has further acquired AgriLiant Genetics, which was a joint venture between Wilmorin and KWS. And we expect this company to reach a value of 1.8 billion US dollar by 2026, making it the sixth largest seed company. So here is the trend analysis of the things that we just discussed. Those phase 1 conglomerate era, 2015 to 2018, where mega mergers happened. Phase 2, shift to specialization, strategic unwinding of conglomerate, formation of Corteva. Phase 3, the current phase, is a pure play strategy. And we are seeing the regional players are rising up. GDM sales increased from $200 million in 2014 to $1.8 billion expected in 2026. Longping high-tech sales increased from 477 million in 2020 to $1.2 billion in 2024. The rank of the top 10 companies share is still stable. It was 61% in 2014 and now 65% in 2024. The top two companies, although the name kept on changing, like among top four, for the top two, the share is still 37 to 39% of the global seed market between 2015 to 2024. The total seed market value has grown at a CAGR of 2.2% between 2018 and 2024, but the GM seeds grew at 3.5% during the same period, although the conventional seed market was still growing during that time, but nearly at a half pace to that of the GM seed market. Going forward, we are expecting more merger and acquisition activities within the pure play business segment to drive the specialization and unlocking the value. This is our forecast for the 2025 regional seed market. So as I said, we are expecting a market growth of 0.9 to 1.5% in 2025 in the global seed market. We were expecting growth in all the regional markets, Europe, Middle East and Africa, Latin America, and North America, but we're expecting slight decline in Asia Pacific. But based on the new outlook, I couldn't update the slides. We are seeing that Asia market is also going to be stable or maybe moving towards a little growth. And the reason for that, like previously, the area forecast that we had, it was showing sharp decline in India rice area, decline in the cotton area, but we see that the rice area, it kind of come back to stable. So we do not see now any decline in the Asia Pacific market in 2025. The key factor that we looked into what impacts the seed market are crop acreage, production cost, currency, and GM trade. So in 2025, looking at the crop acreage, total area allocated to all major crops is projected to experience a slight decline of 0.1%. But the corn acreage was anticipated to rise by 2.5%, soybean likely to achieve a modest increase of 0.4%, and declines in cotton, canola, and rice were expected. As corn represents the largest segment of the seed market, accounting for 37% of the global seed market in 2024, the increase in the corn acreage is expected to stimulate the overall seed market performance, mitigating the impact of area decline observed in other crops. The expansion of GM corn acreage in US, Brazil, and Argentina in 2025 compared to 2024 is a significant factor driving the global corn seed market. In case of soybean, market is projected to benefit from increase in soybean planted area in Brazil during 2025. However, it won't be able to offset the declines coming from the US market. Moving to production cost, the reduction in the production cost in 2024 resulted from lower fertilizer and pesticide prices, helped maintain the seed multiplication cost, thereby keeping the seed prices stable in 2025. The depreciation of various currencies against US dollar, particularly the Brazilian real in 2025 compared to 24, is expected to negatively affect the regional market, the Latin American market. However, the growth in the area in that market would offset the decline coming from currencies. Talking about GM traits, although there have been many GM traits that received cultivation approval in 2024, actually there were 80 traits that have received cultivation approval in different countries in 2024, but their impact will be anticipated to be realized over a time frame of 6 to 7 years following successful integration of those traits and into the varieties suitable for diverse climatic condition. But the traits that have been released during 2020 to 2023 will have impact on 2025-2026 market going forward. So here are the long-term seed market drivers. So starting with the agriculture fundamentals like crop area, crop prices, then the technological drivers, GM seeds, new breeding techniques, hybrid wheat, direct seeded rice, hybrid vegetables. Environmental driver includes policies like decarbonization that increase the demand for varieties with high yield, better climate resilience, lower water NPK requirement, but it hugely get impacted by the politics. Then there are social drivers like people moving away from meat or organic farming, and political driver like regulation of GM and NBTs. So basically, as seed genetics alone account for 74% of the yield gain in crop, there has been a lot of R&D investment in the industry. And when we compare it to the other industry, it is very high as compared to crop protection or fertilizers. Technological drivers have had the greatest impact on seed price growth, and which is the reason for the growth of the seed industry, the global seed industry. As in when a new GM trait or any trait introduced in the market that leads to the increase in the prices. So the graph here is showing the R&D spend by crop input sector. The bars are showing R&D spend, and the yellow line is showing percent R&D trend. So the seed is the most R&D intensive industry, and it spends around 10% of its sales on a global level, around $5 billion annually, representing 10 to 15% of the sales. And some companies even allocating up to 30%, especially the vegetable seed companies, European companies. Seed contribute to 74% of the yield gain based on the studies from the Europe, and that significantly outpaced the fertilizer and crop protection products. So this investment has led to a development of around 1,000 new trades in the pipeline. The number, it comes from the database that we are maintaining, wherein we track all the products that are being developed using new breeding technique or gene modification or GM technology. And out of these 1,000 products, 97% of the products are related to new breeding techniques, and 3% of the products are GM. And the analysis of the product pipeline by technology is covered in the coming slides. Now, moving to the value chain perspective. So the modern ag value chain is a network of interconnected activities and stakeholders. Traditionally, seed innovation was concentrated on input traits, and the scope and the benefit has largely broadened nowadays. And now the new traits that are being developed, they are for processors, consumers, and even for the sustainability and the biofuel. So like processor traits are like trait for high oil content, composition, starch quality, protein structure. Consumer traits improve taste and texture, nutritional enhancement, color, appearance optimization. In case of sustainability and biofuel, the traits could be segregated as traits for grain handler, for processor, and the food companies. The traits like high oil yield, starch quality, biomass conversion are for the processor. Grain handler benefit from better uniformity and traceability, and the food companies value these traits for ESG and branding and through monetization, though the monetization is complex. Now, as I said, the growth in the global seed industry has come from the innovation. And here, this graph is showing the trait development from 1992 to 2024. A total of 145 traits were introduced in 13 crops between 1992 to 2024, although many of these traits were not even able to enter the market. The major traits came from corn, cotton, canola, soybean, and sugar beet. And corn formed the largest number of traits. Around 51% of all the traits that have been developed came from corn, and that's how we see the largest market in front of us. Going forward, we have a very robust pipeline that is anticipated from existing technology, GMO, and the emerging technology, new breeding technique. The graph on the left is showing you the trait pipeline, or the traits that we are expecting to introduce in the market between 2024 to 2030. We are expecting around 31 GM traits, and the largest number of the traits are expected to come from soybean, followed by corn, cotton, sugar beet, and canola. And we expect that these traits will impact the global seed market. They will have the impact during this decade. However, although there are several traits that are coming from the NBT, like 977 traits, largest number of traits are expected to come in rice, followed by soybean, corn, tomato, wheat, and canola. But we do not anticipate impact of NBTs right now during the current decade, because there are several challenges, and we will discuss them going forward. Now, if we look at the value chain perspective, what kind of traits are coming up from the new breeding techniques? So by application technology, we have herbicide tolerance trait, then insect resistant. this is from the GMO side. So like largest number of traits are herbicide tolerance, insect resistance. Most basically they will come up as stack trait going forward. Then there are traits for agriculture, agronomic qualities, traits for nematode resistance, quality traits. But when we look at the NBTs, the largest number of traits are coming from plant yield metabolism and architecture improvement, improve food quality, and non-insect pest protection, and then herbicide tolerance. And when we look at this application category for the NBT, and we know like 70% of the traits are coming from grain and oil seeds and 30% are coming from vegetable. And in case of vegetable, the most important trait is improved food and quality. However, in case of grain and oil seed, the most important trait wherein we are seeing most of the application are plant yield metabolism, architecture improvement. So what is the challenge? Why we think like why the new breeding technique is not going to impact the market growth during this decade is the key challenge is the regulatory non-harmonization. So this slide is showing the trend analysis of 45 countries or region covered in our seed innovation database. So based on our analysis, around 60% of the countries have the framework established for new breeding technique. In 22%, like in 10 countries, it is in process, and in 18%, it is not defined. And if we look at the regulatory status by region and countries, out of the 45 countries, 27 countries consider them as conventional, but again assess them on the basis case by case basis. And then 27% regulate them as GMO, and there's no information available for the 13%. And however, for the countries wherein it is being considered as conventional, there's still non-harmonization in terms of technologies used such as cisgenesis, SDN1, SDN2. So that create complexity and, again, issues for farmers to trust and adopt the technology going forward. Now, looking at the global seed market projection from 2025 to 2035, we are expecting a 2.2% growth in the seed market. The long-term growth will be driven by new trait launches from corn and soybean sector, especially coming from the GM side, GM expansion in China, HB4 wheat, and DSR rice. The fastest growing market during this decade would be Asia Pacific. And again, the highest impact will come from the GM adoption in China. And if we look at the China, like they started their pilot commercialization trials in 2021, their by 2024, 1% of the China corn area was GM corn. That was 1.6 million acre. And in 2025, it increased to 7% of the China's corn area. That is around 8 million acres. So a lot of growth is expected from there, from DSR rice in European market, from the hybrid wheat technology, going to the conclusion, so as I said, the seed industry is a R&D driven sector with a solid trait pipeline and innovation expected from both GM and non-GM technologies. The GM trait and the non-GM traits from technologies such as direct seeded rice and hybrid wheat will be the key market driver during this decade. Adoption of GM in new geographies such as China may significantly impact the market. GM traits are prominently input trait, focusing mainly on industrial crops, wherein NBT traits are more distributed among input agronomic processor consumer trait, bringing diverse variety of crop, including food crops. The impact of NBT on seeds is likely to be less than that of the GM trait, as their benefits are marginal and further downstream, making it challenging to compete with the established traits and chemistries in corn, soybean, cotton, and canola. However, NBT could drive the innovation in fruit and vegetable category and in food crops like rice and wheat, where GM technology has faced several rejection. The impact of NBT, as I said before, is not anticipated within this decade, as it requires harmonization of regulation for successful adoption. The lack of cohesive regulatory framework is delaying the significant influence of NBTs on the market. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bharti, for a very insightful presentation. Any questions for Bharti? I saw many people taking photographs, but I guess. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody, feel free to reach out to me if you have any question, if you'd like to have any discussion. Thank you so much.
So far we have heard about our business, what are the challenges, opportunities, the market size. Uh, Now I think we just take to another gear and talk about what are the other technologies that could help our agriculture, uh, be it innovations, be it technology innovations, be it science innovation. So keeping that in mind, I invite Mr. Pranav Khatri from BCG. Uh, he'll talk about the trends in value chain, how the digitalization is helping in agriculture. So it's going to be a very interesting presentation. Pranav, all yours.
Check. Hello. Okay, I think we had a very insightful session thanks to Bharti. I'd like to zoom out a bit. And what I want to talk about today is across three parts. One is who are we digitizing for? The second is what are we digitizing on? And third is what do we actually need to make this a reality on the ground? Now, we know that India is a land of smallholder farmers. I think that's a very well known fact. About 86% of the farmers own less than 2 hectares. That limits how they grow, and what technology they can use. Second is in terms of lower productivity. Lower productivity because of input usage, because of practices, because of externalities that they don't know about. The third is in terms of input efficiency, in terms of overuse. Many times, whenever I go on fields, farmers basically say, कि इसको ये disease हो गई है तो और दवाई लगा दो. So in terms of what to use and how to use. And the last is in terms of value chain leakages. I think post-harvest losses, when you look at non-perishables, but specifically on perishables. I think the government's doing a lot on this, given different schemes, etc., to create post-harvest infrastructure. But even with these constraints, we should know that India is immensely powerful. We are the world's largest producer of milk, pulses, spices, and millets. We're second largest producer in rice, wheats, fruits, and vegetables, and the third largest in terms of fish capture and aquaculture. Why these crops and why these allied commodities? I think this covers the entire gamut when we look at agri and allied. Now, in this context, I think multiple governments, state governments, or development finance institutions are trying to drive doubling the farmer income as an objective. And I think that requires three key levers. One is productivity growth, second is cost efficiency, and third is price realization. And these are the key levers which today's digital technologies and digitization that we talk about across the agriculture value chain is trying to solve. But solving this requires us to firstly understand who we're solving for. And when you look at the market, there are primarily three archetypes of farmers, depending on the level of technical maturity, depending on their capacity to adopt technology, and also depending on the understanding that they have about how to use it effectively. The first is your aspiring farmers, which form around 80% of this bunch. They earn, annually about 17 to 60,000 rupees, and from an irrigation standpoint, predominantly rely on rain-fed areas. And in terms of adoption, they do not, they've not, they, one interesting fact also, we've done a lot of these ethnographic surveys for farmers, and they primarily use YouTube to actually get their agronomy advice. They don't trust some of the agronomists that are on the field, etc., but they want to validate. The second is your transitioning farmers. These farmers do have micro irrigation given the large push of the government, but they're in the early stage of adopting digital. Early stage in terms of 2 to 3 aspects. One is when you look at inputs. primarily there is low adoption amongst these farmers on that front. The second aspect that they're primarily using it for is now soil health. Soil health is actually picking up a lot in the entire market, and that is one key use case that they're using it for. The third is they primarily use WhatsApp for pricing. They do not have high adoption. I think Cropin has come up with a lot of technologies to drive IoT based devices, but the adoption in this middle segment is low. The last is the advanced farmers, and these are the large farmers who, for whom technology actually makes viable sense at the scale at which they operate. Now, given these archetypes and given the objective, I think there are multiple use cases that are emerging in India today. And let me take you on this journey from the farm to fork table. In the pre-season segment, I think some of these technologies that I'm mentioning here are upcoming. Some of them are already there, and for some of them, the frontier technologies will drive adoption of the underlying platform that exists. So on pre-season planning and finance, I think predictive analytics for term planning using AI ML models to actually gauge what to grow, and when to harvest. I think climate resilient was something that was already touched upon. The second is the digital data backed credit and crop insurance. I think this is gaining traction within the ecosystem where now parametric insurance as a product is something that insurance companies are looking to create. Uh, the issue with insurance today, obviously, is that the claims come delayed. Multiple programs have been piloted that help farmers get the money when issues actually occur on their fields, and also supports with distressed sales. The second aspect where there's a lot of traction, and specifically when you look at the smart sowing and input management segment, is drone-based spraying. I think this is one area, given the government's push as well. There are a lot of last mile entities, be that primary agriculture credit societies, be that SHG women, or be that FPOs, who are trying to leverage this. Again, this requires scale, and hence collectivizing farmers and trying to drive technology adoption in this front is essential. The third aspect that I'd like to talk about is crop monitoring and precision advisory. I think over here, IoT based sensors for irrigation and also to gauge weather is multiple startups have come up on this front. And I think this is one technology that's gaining traction in the entire market. The last, I would like to actually move to market linkage. And while the ecosystem for India in terms of digital agri market sales is low, AI powered grading for color and size across different fruits and vegetables, many agtechs as well as institutional players are adopting it or piloting it to a certain level. What this helps with is to ensure that you are getting more of A grade produce, you're not losing out on all of that. And the second is also to reduce manpower costs. The other technologies mentioned here obviously are nascent in their adoption, but there are a lot of agri-techs coming up who are developing these novel solutions in their micro markets. The other thing to note is a solution in UP may not be applicable for a solution in Kerala, and therefore most of the agtechs that are coming up in the entire digital space are anchored within certain micro markets that they are operating in. Now, while having spoken about frontier tech, I think AI is the name of the game. There are four key initiatives that today people are driving. And if you look at the farm of the future and how that operates, I think there are to four key elements that are playing a role. The first is, given India's labor costs today, these technologies do not make a viable sense. But when you look on the flip side, where today the second generation or third generation of farmers are not willing to farm, you also have a shortage of labor across different lands. And therefore, AI powered machinery, robotics, and automation is one key technology, especially given the advent of AI, over the next 5 to 10 years is gaining traction. The second is sustainability monitoring and carbon accounting. Carbon credits for driving income growth. Obviously, the entire MRV system in India has to be instituted to drive this, but there are FMCG players like Pepsi, etc., who are driving programs to understand what it would take to scale these. The third is the most important, and I think this is already being used within agri, fisheries, animal husbandry, which is credit scoring to drive financial inclusion for new to credit farmers. But I would not only say new to credit farmers, I would also, put out a stat right now. We have about 7 to 8 crore farmers in India, out of which there are an additional 7 crore farmers who are not accounted for. These are the tenant farmers. They don't own land. They are excluded primarily from a few of the key government schemes. And today, models are being developed to drive inclusion as well as access of finance for these institutions. Specifically, people are using thin file mobile signals, people are using account information, they're using cash inflow and outflow out of their accounts to actually create alternative credit scores to drive this. The government's also planning to launch a Grameen credit score, which is going to help SHG members individualize credit, which is based on similar principles. The last is supply forecasting to help government, cooperatives, and agribusinesses plan for regional security. I think this is a very well-known fact. Some of you would be using it in some shape or form within your businesses as well. But these are the 4 AI-based frontier technologies that are coming up in the entire value chain, and adoption, especially for credit scoring and financial inclusion, is gaining long traction. Now, yes, technology is great. Technology will drive value. It will help us reach who we want from a farmer perspective. But digitization is not easy given India's context. Um, I think concerted efforts to drive commercialization, adoption, as well as economic value for the farmer require a 4-pronged approach. The first is effective collectivization at scale. Um, we do have a lot of collectives that have been set up, but in terms of sustainability of those collectives, the digitization opportunities of those collectives, I think there is certain institutional strengthening needed on that front to make any of these technologies viable. The second is digital only does not work in agri. I think all of you would know that. A phygital model is needed where last mile institutional structures which are already in place, be that your rural bank centers, be that primary agriculture credit societies, or even the KVKs that we have in villages, which can be used as focal points to drive adoption of these technologies and also information. Now, coming to the access to finance and infrastructure, I think whenever the government comes out with a scheme to actually drive adoption, the first thing the farmer expects is that the loan is going to be given at the same KCC rate. Now, that's not going to be viable in all situations, but there is a need for a blended fund that will drive affordability of these solutions. Given the scale that we operate in micro areas of less than 2 hectares, most of these technologies do not make sense. But collectivization as well as capital infusion will help drive viability at least for 3 to 5 years, after which results can be realized. I think the R element is also critical. When we look at AI, etc., the foundational models that all of the technologies and layers that are being built on are not Indianized. Vernacular use, which is different languages. Second is trained on Indian models. The other day, I was talking to someone from IBM where they're working on frontier technology with regards to AI, but all of their models have been trained in India. Yes, the government's investing on this, but Indianization of foundational technology is also needed to drive useful adoption. The last is when you look at market linkages, I think while there have been efforts to solve part of the problem and some of it may not solve immediately, I think there is a need for a gender and sustainability inclusion led model. I think many women, etc., and when you look at women farmers, they are not very comfortable going to the mandi. They are not very comfortable going early mornings, and therefore they are these local traders that they sell for. But creating a model that includes women and sustainability at its core would be needed to drive adoption on an overall basis. Now, having said this, I wanted to end the session a little differently. I wanted to leave everyone with 3 key questions that we collectively should deliberate on. And maybe right now, if you have few thoughts, happy to hear them. Otherwise, we can discuss on the sidelines. I think first is whenever you look at digital, I think one key question ecosystem stakeholders need to answer is how do you build trust and shared ownership? Why would a farmer be willing to share his information with the platform to drive any level of digitization? And how would he trust that platform to either do the right thing or give him the suggestion in the right way. The second is, how do we make it truly inclusive? And what I mean by inclusive is gender neutral, scale neutral, and also vernacular neutral. Um, Many times, so like for example, if I tell you, when you look at market linkage, you have different, you have an aggregator working in North India, you have Ninja Cart in the South. I think each of them operates differently because the micro market is different. But how do you drive inclusion at scale? And the last is, when we look at digitization, we have seen a lot of pilots that are either being run by the government, either being run by DFIs, global foundations, or even for that matter, many agri-tech startups. But a scale, I mean, pilot to scale is still a path that is untreaded. It's untreaded because of multiple reasons that we discussed earlier. But I think one thing to ponder on is, what are those unlocks needed to drive each of these aspects to make value chain digitization in India a reality for the kind of archetypes that we are dealing for. And yeah, I mean, that was that. Happy to hear your thoughts. If you have any questions, please do let me know.
Yeah, that was a great presentation, Pranav. Thanks. Question is, how do you see the role of digital public infrastructure and DPGs in achieving this, what you have projected?
So that's a very good question. And, you know, there are, I can give you 2 to 3 use cases and how DPIs are today being used within the entire space. And let me take 2 real examples to make it, relatable to everyone. I think we've been talking about AgriStack for a very long time. We've been talking about digitizing farmer records, geo-referencing them. But in terms of state adoption and state driving, that is fairly limited. On the flip side, the government's recently launched the PAX computerization effort, which is a 2,500 crore initiative to digitize primary agriculture credit societies. Each PAX deals with about 1,000 farmers, so you can look at the kind of scale. For these institutions, I think DPIs and DPGs in India have not evolved to the extent that they can be used primarily from an agriculture lens. The area where they are being used for is verification of the person through either DigiLocker accounts, or for the entire eKCC renewal, where you're trying to leverage either their old repayment histories as well as credit scores to drive the renewal cycles. But fresh issuance is again limited. So in short, I think DPIs, DPGs in India are a little longer way to go, especially on the use case perspective. But from an identity perspective, I think it is being used a lot. I think the government's planning to scale this PAX computerization effort and make that a DPI, which can augment anything that's coming up later to actually create multiple use cases and data sets, which the entire ecosystem can leverage to drive initiatives forward. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Pranav, you talked about multiple use cases. My name is Ajay Rana. I'm the chairman for Federation of Seed Industry of India. So many of our member companies have invested on building, I'll call mostly digital services.
Okay, sir.
One of the largest seed company globally, Monsanto, bought Climate Corp. So about $1 billion investment. But in India, also many agri-tech startups. My question is around like none of them have been able to monetize it. What are the challenges there? Like why farmer value these things, but they don't want to pay for it?
So that's a very good question. So when we talk about, and I myself worked at an agri-tech startup before, so I'll probably draw a parallel from that. I think there is a big issue with trust. For example, even though a farmer, like, let me take an example. There was a farmer in Barwani who we were looking to connect with an agri-tech startup to actually buy all of his wheat produce. The price that we offered from the agri-tech was higher than what the local trader was offering that person. But he still went ahead with the trader. This primarily because A, there is a trust deficit in who is this person or who is this interface that's interacting with me. So I think that is one key aspect because of which scale and adoption as well as profitability has been limited. I think when we talk about capturing more value out of any transaction, I think many of these technologies, be that IoT sensors, be that drone spraying, etc., become viable at a certain unit scale. While FPOs were intended to be that unit scale which collectivize and bring a certain catchment into effect to monetize these and drive value, I think that institutional structure has not also succeeded to that extent as envisaged. So while there are these aspirational farmers for whom, and these technology mature farmers for whom you can drive adoption and capture value, I think about 90% of the market still remains under collectivized to make these solutions a little more viable.
Yeah, Pranav, Prashant here from
Hi, sir.
Advanta. And my question is two ways. Do you see the consolidation of agriculture happening? The fragmented land holding is one reality, but is there any consolidation through FPOs is happening for agriculture which may facilitate mechanization? That is one part of my thinking. Second is, what is your opinion on what percentage of value which consumer gives for agriculture produce? What share does farmer get today, and is there any possibility of improving that, that so that farmer will enjoy more share of what consumer pay, which happens in other industry? Like
Correct,
take
sir.
an example of car industry.
Yeah,
What I pay for car, manufacturer gets more.
correct, sir.
But in agriculture, unfortunately, this is not happening. And unless that happens, the thing may not happen. So these are the thought process.
So if I may just reiterate, sir, your first question was on collectivization and how effective that is. And the second is how do you capture more market price and market value for the farmer? So I'd like to take your second question first. When you look at the entire market linkage value chain, and there are multiple stakeholders who are playing a role. You have your farmer, you have a local trader. The local trader might sell it to an interstate trader who sends it to the APMC mandi, and then you potentially have a processor or an exporter. One thing to note is this is a capitalistic market. There is no additional value that any of these value chain stakeholders is going to capture if they do not take the additional risk that the value chain stakeholder who they are replacing takes. If I take a small example, sir, at the end, if a farmer takes his produce and sends it at the APMC mandi, there are 4 to 5 risks that he encounters. The first is a quality risk. When it reaches there, it's not of the quality and it sells at a lower price. The second is a secondary market liquidation risk. In case it does not get accepted, where does he then send it? Otherwise, he has to transport it back and undergo costs. The third is a quantity risk when something is, say, 20 tons and it's 19 tons. The fourth is, sir, price risk, right? You have to play with the market. You don't make money on every trade. Each of the value chain stakeholders that we are seeing assumes this risk. And therefore, if a farmer sends it to the local trader, he will not be able to capture the same value out of the trade than if that farmer had sold it at the mandi, because the risk taking capacity is a little low. Secondly, distressed sales in India are very high. Distressed sales are basically, to your question about value capture, ideally what we have seen is if 100 units of something is produced out of the farm, 1/3 immediately goes into household expenses, loans, education for the children. The second 1/3 goes to repay the person who he had taken a loan from or certain amount of credit that he has in the market. The other 1/3 is used for consumption and then subsequent sales in the market when the prices go high. This is the traditional farmer who does not have good grain storage. So the ability to capture value is the exact thing that's limiting capturing value, sir. Low risk will definitely get you low returns because you do have to assume risk across the value chain, and that is one concern that we are seeing. Between 0.5% to 1% is each of these risk elements that get layered on top of each other to actually see value capture. So to your first questions on collectivization, sir, I don't think I need to talk to this forum and update on how it has been. I think everyone knows. But sir, the biggest issue because of which it has not taken up to the extent that is, sir, is primarily governance. And I have myself worked on multiple programs where we are helping some of the stakeholders who you'll also work with in driving their last mile center profitability. So governance issues are the biggest issues because of which things are not working out. There were multiple credit programs that we were looking to launch for certain farmer producer organizations. The CEO suddenly quits. Then there's a reconstitution of the board. Board is unstable. The bank is not willing to give loans. And if the bank is not willing to give loans, there is no value that that collective is driving for its farmers. And because of which collectivization is also hampered to a larger extent, sir. So collectivization, yes, not at scale, primarily by governance. And for capturing value, risk to be assumed, each risk element being between 0.5 to 1% of the price. More risk you take, the more value we capture, sir.
Pranav,
Yes, sir.
Yogesh here.
There are a lot of questions on this session.
Yeah. What are your views on the data rights and control? Who owns the data which is generated by the farmer for agriculture? Today, I mean, in companies and in our other industries, we speak about data, I mean, privacy, all those things. But in agriculture, is there a legal framework coming in? What about the governance? Who owns that data, which is very, very
Correct.
important?
That's a very good question, sir. Sir, there are 2 to 3 types of information that we are talking about right now. One is personal information. One is information out of the asset or the tool. And third is ecosystem information. So right now, I think for at least financial institutions, if I take for that matter, RBI has released its responsible AI policy. And I think most of the companies now are adhering to that policy. The personal information cannot be shared without consent. And therefore, that remains either masked or that remains transformed so that you don't actually identify who that person is. When we talk about information coming out of the assets and the tools that the AgTech is creating, that data is co-owned by the user as well as the institution providing for it. And ecosystem is obviously wherever the sources lie. But in the data protocols, sir, I think the new frameworks that are coming up, especially on responsible AI, is even more critical because hallucination is going to create a lot of credibility risk for anyone who is instituting initiatives, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Prabhana, for a very useful presentation and a lot of questions on that for sure. So now we move slightly towards science, how we can build a resilient future. I'd like to invite Dr. C.N. Nirja. She's a principal scientist and head of biotechnology, ICR Institute of Rice in Hyderabad, and she'll talk about preparing for future climate resilient rice.
Good afternoon. On behalf of ICR IIRR, I thank Asian Seed Congress to include us in this event. So I shall briefly update the audience about how are we preparing for climate resilient rice across the country. So as highlighted by my previous speakers, climate change is here, and we are noting the change, especially increase in the minimum temperature and altered precipitation rainfall patterns, especially reduced rainfall during June, July, when it is required for transplantation, and intense rainfall during the uh, rainy season, that is Kharif, of course, cyclones. And in addition to this climate change, effects of climate change, we also have the contribution from the rice cultivation, especially methane, as well as methane from rice cultivation and nitrous oxide from total agricultural soils, which are contributing to the greenhouse gases and therefore climate change. So from rice perspective, you all know 50% of the India depends on rice for calories. and also it occupies around 47 million hectares, and rice is life. And if everything goes well, it could be largest producer for this current year across the globe. So, and we all know about the contribution of rice exports, even though there are restrictions on. And what is most important is, though rice is water loving plant, if the precipitation, that is rainfall, is more than 25%, yield reduces. If solar radiation is also increases, yield reduces. For 1 degree of temperature rise, there is decrease around 4%. And and precipitation also, if it is increases, the yield decreases. So, and though the carbon dioxide increases the productivity of rice, the consequences of increase of carbon dioxide is known to all. And of course, the dynamics of the pest and diseases have changed. Nutrient content of rice is also changed. And as I mentioned before, the greenhouse gas emissions of contribution by the rice. So these are some concerted research efforts towards climate resilient rice across the country. So we from ICR, Indian Institute of Rice Research, Hyderabad, and we also have one Central Rice Research Institute in Cuttack, and there is IRA, which exclusively works on Basmati in New Delhi. And in addition to that, we have several private sector organizations, state agriculture universities, and many more ICR institutes who work on rice. So we also have like every crop in India, we have All India Coordinated Research Project on rice, where around 400 scientists work on various types of rice. So as you can see, since beginning of Green Revolution, there have been several varieties released, and these varieties are still being released. So earlier rice improvement programs focused on yield and pest and disease resistance and mostly on quality. But with the climate change, there are several aspects under which rice varieties are developed, improved, and being released. So if you see and we also need infrastructure to simulate this climate change. Many of the ICR institutes and of course many of the private companies do have these facilities, whether they are rainout shelters or dedicated field facilities to screen for submergence or nutrient use efficiency and disease and pest reactions in glass houses. So we also use across the country, all the rice improvement programs. We also use, of course, conventional breeding. As Dr. Bharti has pointed out, several biotechnological techniques, and now MAS has integrated into the breeding programs. We also use various NGS, next generation sequencing technologies, SNPs, and other markers to develop varieties for climate resilience in rice. So as you can see, for heat and heat stress, which is very important, especially in the Rabi, that is a dry season, where reproductive stage coincides with the high temperatures in April, May. So we have several varieties developed not only by IIRR, but our institute and also by OUAT, that is a Orissa Agricultural University, Bhubaneswar. As you please see that it can tolerate up to 38 degrees centigrade temperature during Rabi. So we also have drought tolerant varieties, not only by our institute, but also by our sister institutes across the country. So these are drought, as you know, these are like upland condition, and also these are stable, they give stabilized yield under drought conditions. Since drought is too drastic, we have aerobic rice varieties where this is the idea is to reduce the water consumption at least to 20 to 50%, where rice is grown in non-flooded conditions, and specifically they have the advantage of drought tolerance as well as the irrigated. So you have combination of lowland and upland as well. We have many varieties released across the country. So these aerobic rice varieties are also suited for direct seeded rice, as has been mentioned by my previous speakers. This direct seeded rice avoids the transplanting, which also avoids the labor cost, and also water saving, and also can be more profitable. In addition to that, the emission of green gases is also reduced since it is not grown in puddle conditions. There are many aerobic rice varieties developed, including hybrids. So Cuttack, our sister institute, has expertise. They have at least more than 30 varieties developed for these ecology, aerobic rice varieties. And agriculture universities are also not lagging behind. Sabor and OUAT are also developing several varieties. Whatsoever varieties I am mentioning, I am just highlighting. There are many more varieties being developed by many agricultural universities. So as mentioned by my previous speakers, we have herbicide tolerant rice varieties. And as I have mentioned before, marker assisted selection, this trait has been taken from mutant of N22, which can tolerate the herbicide. And this is being now regularly used in breeding programs. IRI has used it in basmati varieties. CRRI has used for the varieties popular in Eastern India. And next comes the other side of the climate change, that is flash floods. Flash floods are mostly occur in eastern parts of India, where you have a sudden floods for a short time, maybe 10 to 15 days, and the rice should able to resume its growth after the flash floods. So there is a gene called sub1, and it has been introgressed into many popular varieties of eastern India, whether it is Orissa, Bengal, or Assam. So you have a lot of these varieties. These varieties have been developed using mass. So you can see there are many more varieties. So, even for stagnant flooding also, CRRA has developed a variety, which is the CR Dhan 414. So now you might be wondering why there are so many varieties developed for a single trait, because we have around 1700 varieties, which also include 160 hybrids, because the requirements are different here. We have different seasons. As you can see, the duration from 70 days to 165 days. Some places it is the release of canal water. Some places it is the rain, monsoon rain. Some places it is to suit the next crop. So because the duration is different and photo period is different, a popular variety in southern India may not flower at all in West Bengal. So this is important. Of course, pathotype and biotype of the insects, which I will speak in further slides, and grain type. The grains preferred by Kerala are not preferred by Andhra. The grains are preferred by Andhra are not preferred by West Bengal. So the grain segment is also different for rice. So you have different varietal requirements. So are our breeding programs. So now this is the most important early duration. When monsoon fails, the government asks us immediately what are the early durate varieties, so that they can fit into that 120 or 100 days. So we have several drought tolerant early varieties, and most of the materials we also receive from IRI, the Philippines. So that material is also normally integrated into our breeding programs. So next comes the nutrient use efficiency, as has been spoken by my previous speakers. Excess nitrogen, excess phosphorus do contribute to climate change. So taking marker assisted selection, the gene identified by for low phosphorus tolerance, several low phosphorus use efficient varieties which can tolerate low phosphorus applications have been developed. At least 6 varieties have been developed. These are using mass. So you can see many more varieties. And recently we have also released a couple of varieties which have nitrogen use efficiency and are tolerant to low nitrogen. So these have been only recently identified, and these will be tested for their GHG contribution by the crop production scientist. So, and one it is like an a la carte. So once we have the genes, now what we have done is we have developed several biotic stresses and nutrient use efficiencies, like you have submergence and drought tolerance. Though it looks very contradictory, but it do happen in Eastern India. You have submergence also, and drought is also there for some time of the rice growth period. We have varieties like this. And now with the abiotic stresses, addressing by abiotic stresses, we also should see the pest and disease scenario for the rice cultivation because of the climate change. As you can see, the pests, now we have at least 20 pests reported for rice, and at least 12 diseases reported. False smut, which was a major, very minor disease, now it has the incidence has increased. So is a BPH. So since, as I mentioned before, using the biotechnology, we have identified genes for blast, a major disease in rice. So these genes have been deployed regularly in the breeding program, and we have lot of varieties integrated with genes for blast resistance. And not only one gene, sometimes we have couple of genes, maybe 3, 4 genes also are there for a single blast, because the pathotype is so much variable. The virulence is different. And IRA has also done the introgression of blast resistance. And next comes the BLB, bacterial leaf blight, which is very virulent, though there are around 22 pathotypes. One gene is not enough sometimes. So you have lot of bacterial leaf blight resistant varieties by IIRR Hyderabad in different varieties, and also by Basmati by IRA. As you can see in several Basmati varieties also, bacterial leaf blight genes have been incorporated. And Cuttack also has improved lot of varieties for bacterial leaf blight resistance. You see Punjab. This is what I am mentioning, the importance of the geographical location. Since BLB is virulent in Punjab and that geographical region, there are several varieties developed using mass with bacterial leaf blight resistance. And not only in regular varieties, they have also put in basmati varieties in Punjab Basmati by PAU, that is Punjab Agricultural University. Then comes the insect pest. We have lot of QTLs identified for genomic regions identified for BPH tolerance. So even these have been used, and varieties are being developed for BPH, that is brown plant hopper tolerance. So now comes the multiple stress varieties. So once you have you just stack each variety with more genes, and also add the high yield accordingly and the grain quality as such. So you have BLB blast resistant varieties, and you have hybrids also with resistance, and multiple resistance like bacterial blight, leaf blight. So you have all combinations of the resistant genes. So in addition to that, we are also taking novel traits, that is strong culm, because using biotechnological approaches, we are identifying strong culm, which is needed for the especially cyclone affected regions. And many of our varieties are standing because of this gene. In addition to that, because of nematode, root knot nematode is becoming increasing problem in DSR. So we are also trying to identifying genomic regions for this DSR. So you name the trait, we try to work for the genetics of it, identify genes for it, and use it for marker assisted selection to improve the varieties for that particular trait. So I just how we pool the genes, how we combine and converge and pyramid the genes, whether it is biotic stress resistance, BPH, gallmeat, and salinity, drought, submergence, low P tolerance, and of course, with the advent of genomics, now we have genes for yield also. Those also we will try to incorporate. And now, I think 2, 3 years back, there have been reports that increasing carbon dioxide is decreasing the nutrient content of the grains in all rice, wheat, and vegetables also. So we are also breeding nutrient-dense varieties with high grain, zinc, and protein. And there have been around 13 biofortified varieties. And I'll conclude my presentation with the latest development as mentioned by Dr. Bharti. We have our government of India, DBT, has deregulated SDN1, SDN2 events. So our Dr. Satyendra Mangrotia has focusedly developed genome edited lines. He has edited one gene, cytokinin oxidase, in BPT 5204, which is a medium slender and very popular variety. Normally it has 200 grains, and now he has doubled the grains. Since this is cytokinin, a hormone, a key hormone in metabolism of the plant, so we have also observed many more changes. As you can see, the grain number, which is very clear, and we have also seen the vigorous growth of the plant. We could see the strong culm because, and it could also grow well in drought conditions, and 50% nitrogen also hope this has been evaluated, and we are just waiting for the regulatory approvals or IPR approvals which are being processed by ICR. So what I want to show now here is earlier when we were not using genomics to that much level, you could see whenever there is abnormal year in terms of climate change, there has been decline in the rice production. But as you can see on 20s, there is not much change, even though the monsoon or climate is not normal. So in conclusion, we have climate resilient varieties for the traits which are needed for the climate change. More than 40 varieties are there, and these are for different crop durations and different grain segments. We have yield advantage when compared with the drought situation or abnormal situation. And we are continuously working, not only we means the rice research group, the 400 scientists which I have mentioned are continuously working for the adoption of climate resilience to the rice, and whatever genomic traits are required, whether it is nitrogen use efficiency, false smut, others are being researched upon. So this is Kaizen, change for good, and rice is always ready for the change, including climate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Any questions for Dr. Nirja? Okay, no? Thank you so much. So it's good to know that the development in rice, which are climate resilient. Thank you so much, ma'am. Yeah. So from rice, we move on to vegetables. So we now invite, I think most of the audience here knows Dr. Surendra Tikku. Currently, he is the Director of Advanced Training in Plant Breeding, and he'll talk about the vegetables for nutritional security in. Thank you so much, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible? I thank EPSA for giving me this opportunity. I think vegetables, we all know that 60% of our nutrients come from vegetables. And a lot of progress has happened in the last 30 years. You've all seen that from 70s till the open general license opened in 90. We moved from OPs to hybrids in almost 10, 12 crops. And that has really helped vegetables to improve the yields per unit area. But what has happened is that we have always bred for either yield or disease resistances. We basically try to save losses and gain the yield. But nutritional quality breeding has not happened much in the vegetable field, especially in India. So what I am trying to bring to you is the fact that what is the issue involved, and some case studies where we see that there is diversity available, where high nutrition is available in germplasm of vegetables. And I feel there is a strategy that we can use to now start developing nutritional quality with yield. In face of the climate change, you have already seen what climate change is. But let me quickly say that we have progressed since last 25 years in India. The hunger index has progressively gone down, which is a good sign. But what happens is that this is a little bit skewed. The higher income people have more access to nutritious vegetables. The rest probably eat more grains, etc. So we need to balance it out a little. And two things that have happened in our country is that if you see the yield increases that have happened in vegetables, our best farmers take yields that are as good as in US or in China, but our averages are half of China in almost every crop. And the as a result, our averages are very low. So although we have done a lot to improve the yields, it is not spread out to the last mile. As you know, 80% of our farmers are smallholder farmers, which are about less than a hectare. So I think there is a gap there in terms of extension and reaching that section of the farming community. On the other hand, I remember 40 years back when I was starting, we used to have 120 gram was our average per capita consumption of vegetables, which now has improved to 250, which is doubling in the last 30 years. But the requirement is 450 grams, and we still have to cover that gap. And the other thing is that if you see the graph on the left, 10 to 12 vegetables is all the middle income and lower income groups eat. It's only the higher income in the urban populations where it has gone into up to 30. So it is not diverse enough. So we are not eating the complete nutritional quality that is available. So we need to extend that. So lower productivity, not harvesting existing genetic potential across the board to the lowest farmers, and the urban rural divide is there on how much nutritional vegetables we eat. Don't worry about that very busy slide, but I want to make a point that we breeders in the last 30 years since this breeding and vegetable hybrids came in, what we have done is we have gone from seasonal to extended sowing windows. Because 30 years back, you were not getting good cauliflowers in, say, June or July in the summers. And tomatoes and other crops, they were either Rabi, mainly Rabi, and some were in the rainy season. But today, the green over there is the sowing period of south zone, west zone, north zone, and east zone. On the left side are crops with, in vegetables, every crop has 4, 5, 8, 10 segments. And segments are physical quality, not nutritional quality. Such segments are visible quality that people want. Firmer fruit, good shape, whiter color in cabbages and cauliflower, etc. So what has happened is that although we have increased the sowing window for our various crops, north and east still, except I think brassicas, where you also see a green across the year, because we have now all groups covered in cauliflower and cabbage. But we others see north and east only traditional kharif and a little bit of rabi. And in west and south zone, you will see a little bit across the board sowing happening every month or every second month. There is vegetables happening. But now, last 10 years have brought another challenge. You have already seen some of it, that since last 10 years, our average temperatures have grown by about nearly a degree. But that feels much more when you go into the field. And so as a result, we need heat tolerance in our vegetables, because we are growing even in the summer season. So the fact is that we need to get a little more heat tolerance in our vegetables, even in the rabi sown crops, because the heat starts a little earlier than it was happening. It's same thing happening with rice. Dr. Nirja talked about. They are facing the same situation in rice. Vegetables, the same thing. On the other hand, our rains, if you see at the bottom, they were deficit in before 2015, but last 5 years we have excess rains and it is spread out. So what we need is again resilience, and we need elasticity in our new products. It's like I compare it with our human beings. We go to a cold country, we will put on a coat and feel better and be able to survive. For vegetables, we need to find that coat. And which is genetics. We need to do it through genetic means to be able to do that. So now, why do we need to screen for nutritional quality? high temperature, if you see tomatoes, it reduces vitamin C, lycopene content, and accelerates decay. And I'm now talking of only nutritional quality. On the other hand, the yield gets reduced because fruit set is impaired, and as a result, you lose 20-30% of your yield. The size doesn't happen, so you lose the yield. Spinach lowers folate and vitamin C content. In broccoli, cauliflower reduces glucosinates. Carrot lowers beta carotene. Peas lowers protein content, lower nitrogen assimilation. Lettuce, early bolting. So I'm just giving you examples. In every crop, the higher heat will reduce our nutritional quality. So whatever nutritional quality we have currently in our genetics, we are not going to harvest what is already there. So we need to improve that. Now come to rainfall, it reduces sugar content. You know, I mean, we used to say in the grapes that if you need more yield, you irrigate 1 week before harvest and you'll get more yield, but then you lose total soluble solids and sugars. So the quality will be impaired. Impairs color development. We need good sunshine and good temperature for that. Leaches away iron, calcium. So the soil is also getting depleted. So besides, of course, in the rainy season, you can get all the diseases, the bacterial, the fungal, root wilts, they increase a lot. So this is the question that we have to address for our next. So where do we go from here? Before that, I want to address, you have heard Dr. Nirja, bio-fortified, the government from the ICR and the university, 108 bio-fortified varieties and hybrids were introduced in the field crops. In our vegetable crops, Syngenta has purple and orange vitamin A rich cauliflowers. In cauliflowers and cabbages, we have all kinds of ranges available. We have purple bindi with high flavonoids coming from ICR institutes and as well as like Advanta has kumkum. Then we have okra germplasm with high digestibility is coming from Singeri. It's a novel germplasm. Peppers and tomatoes with all kinds of different colors, giving you more lycopene and other flavonoids. So, but this comes with a little bit of yield penalty. It's not that you will get the same yield because as the dry matter increases, you will definitely lose some yield. My problem is that where are those bio-fortified varieties? Where are these high nutritional quality vegetables? They are not reaching the farmers because there is one big gap, and that gap is consumer awareness is not there, and there is no marketing push to get that. I will explain it with my own particular case, which I have faced. Otherwise, there is purple radish, there is red radish, there is carrots. You will see all kinds of possibility, but we need to bring it to the last mile. Just a few cases. I know time is short. In tomato, an excellent work done in Cornell University, they found that 93% of the core esculentum germplasm does not have the flavor genes that they discovered in the crop wild relatives, especially Pimpinellifolium and Cerasiform. There is a gene called Tomlox SC. It is present in 90% of the wildlife, but it is only in 2.2% of the domesticated. And this happens because we are not concentrating on selecting for nutritional quality. When we are looking at yield, we are looking at disease resistance. So similar is, I think, the case in almost all crops. Pre-breeding using crop wild relatives is missing. Private sector, probably a few, but not happening. Public sector, unfortunately, I can say they also seem to be driving about making hybrids to the market, but not working on the long-term perspectives, especially in the vegetable crops. And several GM products are possible. There are lots of, papers, but I will not go into that in detail. This is my own case. We had a lot of diversity on the left. We took a heirloom variety. We crossed it with an F1 with genes from TLCV, good size and firmness, shelf life. And from that, I'll cut the long story short. There are now 100 gram, 120 gram to cherry tomatoes coming from that program. And we have developed a few hybrids where we did the nutritional quality analysis. And we have in two, on the left there is Timia, on the right there is Uzma. Uzma is heat tolerant, can be grown in summer, and Timia can be grown in rain and has excellent early blight tolerance. Besides, they all have TLCV, TY genes, and also Timia has TMB. What it has is high firmness. 15 days after ripe, it can be transported from Nasik to Hyderabad, Bangalore for one of the tomato hackathon. I was chairing that tomato grand challenge from the Commerce Ministry. The lady did juice quality, and there is a possibility of taking it not only for fresh but juice quality. Lycopene is double than what is available in the current hybrids, and ascorbic acid is also double, and then we have higher sugar levels. But how does it reach the market? We don't know at the moment. We need to do marketing of these biofortified products because they have pretty good yield. They may not be exactly with the normal types, but they have to be sold at a higher price. That goes with all the nutritional quality materials. So then some other cases where nutritional quality under high temperature, there's a paper, this paper, I think this will be distributed, I don't want to go, but there is a paper that shows that there are 10 genotypes with higher maintained nutritional quality even at higher temperatures. And some of them have much more. This kind of germplasm needs to go into our heat tolerance breeding. Innovation, somebody said in the early morning that our innovation is not reaching the farmers. I was very happy that my friend from Syngenta days, Luis Ortega, won an award for this. Will we sell it in India? This has high quality, he has high flavor. It's called Yoon. But I suggest that FSI and NSAI should look at the possibility of creating a fruit logistica type of a conference in India where such innovative products will get more exposure, and maybe then they will reach a wider audience. This is something I recommend very highly. Then in okra, the only paper I have found on okra nutritional quality is from South Africa. He's a Google scholar, Abe Abe Shigro. He works in South Africa, and they did 57 germplasm collections, all kinds of nutritional quality testing, and they found that okra doesn't only give us fiber and magnesium and potassium, but it also gives us protein we sometimes try to ignore because we get fresh seeds, active amino acids, and that we can use. So we need to do this kind of study more so that we can get the best selected and then put it into the right agronomic background. Similarly, sweet potato, carrot with carotenoids, spinach, capsicum. We have wide germplasm available, especially in the crop wild relatives. So we need to get into this this work. So I would like to conclude with what do we need to do this? Because I feel screening strategy is something very important. I suggest that for the heat tolerance for the dry season, please add February sowing for heat tolerance, the same set that you are screening. Also do one more screening in the February months, and South and West February, March sowing, because then you will be able to really screen for heat tolerance. And once you do that, you need to do the same thing for F2. And then I saw this map few days back. ICRISAT has come out with a map for a 10-meter irrigated rain-fed map in the country. So you will use it for pinpointing the location for testing and use these selected genotypes. But you need to do the GWAS at both the locations, not at one location, and then find correlations with the traits, and trait-linked markers can be found, and then identify promising accessions across environments, and then take it into the breeding courses, make the crosses, and then pyramid these genes into the exact, so that you have high nutritional quality, stable under higher climate stress, and have the proposed yield. On the other hand, good agricultural practices have not gone beyond a certain area. So protected cultivation can help us mitigate the rainy and the heat tolerance by doing shades, but this is not cost effective as of now. It is increasing, but not at the rate we would want it to. Agronomic extension, we need to find a solution to this. Knowledge transfer is not happening across the nation. So otherwise, the FPOs is a chain that we need to work on and diversify our eating beyond the 1 to 12, not 12 crops that we are eating. We need balanced nutrition by increasing the leafy vegetables, increasing the fruit vegetables in our daily consumption. With that, I would like to conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Any questions for Dr. Tiku? Okay, if not, I'll invite all the speakers to come to stage for a photograph, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for today's session. The technical session is finished. Tomorrow, we'll have the technical session on the accelerating and safeguarding innovation at 1 p.m. for tomorrow technical session. And this is not related to the technical session. It's another session of the Seed and Tech Showcase sponsored session. It will be from 9 a.m. to 12:30. So wish everyone have a great afternoon today and see you tomorrow. Thank you.